Well, the temperatures continue to drop here at Marfogan Weather HQ and across the majority of the UK as the cold front sinks south and Arctic air moves in behind. Thanks for clicking on to the slightly abbreviated version of the Thursday European Outlook. The reason why is because I'm running rapidly out of time, so I need to go off to work, unfortunately. But yeah, the temperatures started off, around midnight at about between 12 and 13 Celsius. Very stiff westerly wind dominated late last night and into the early hours of the morning. And of course, as those winds bumped over the hills to the west of this location and other parts of northern Scotland, we've seen the temperatures rise in response to that. But as the morning progressed, the winds started to bend more towards the northwest and introduced something a lot colder. And you can see here, this is off Meteoseel. This is the current pressure pattern, and there's that area of high pressure now starting to kind of go more west of the UK and Ireland, and that opens the door to this northerly airflow here. Fairly deep area of low pressure, as you can see, over southern Finland here. So between the high to the west, area of low pressure to the east, you've got that northerly flow, and you can see here a real squeeze in the isobars just to the east of Iceland. Really howling winds coming in from a northerly direction here, and that is straight out of the Arctic. Also, an interesting thing to point out with regards to the strong winds during the overnight period last night, we actually had just to the north of the UK, really between Scotland and Iceland, the strongest core of jet stream winds anywhere in the northern hemisphere. Very, very powerful jet here, ripping across the North Atlantic here. Pretty flat, as you can see here, but a big temperature gradient between a 1038 high just to the southwest of Ireland versus a 956 millibar area of low pressure here, just between, essentially just off the Greenland coast here, and a very sharp temperature gradient here between the high and the low meant that we had a very powerful jet stream wind, probably in excess of 230 miles an hour, by the way. And then, of course, as you translate that down towards the surface, we had that very tight pressure gradient representing very strong winds. In fact, the winds, I would say, here during the early hours of this morning were about the strongest we've seen since a storm back in March earlier in the year. So quite a notable event in terms of wind. So, of course, GFS, this is the pressure chart as we go forward, and we are introducing that colder air. So you can see here the 850 temperatures now starting to introduce that Arctic air into the pattern here. But as you notice here, and this has been represented here in the channel for quite some time, that area of high pressure is not getting far enough to the west to really open the true door to the Arctic with regards to Ireland and Northern Ireland in particular. Just on the fringes there of the very cold air, it's really down the eastern side of the UK that we see that cold air in the mix. And the reason for that, the culprit for that and stopping that area of high pressure progressing west is this area of low pressure. And it's the type of track, depth, position, and then movement of this area of low pressure is going to be key as to what we see towards the weekend and into particularly early next week here. It's the movement of these lows that will dictate whether we see that area of high pressure building more over Scandinavia and drawing that Arctic air in from the east, which certainly would be notably cold. You notice here that the latest run of the GFS has that area of cold getting held back until about the early portion of next week. And then you notice here that not one but two areas of low pressure is actually sinking southwards here, and that dam is essentially starting to open up with regards to the cold. We've got a world of cold to the north of the UK. Now, the ECMWF has not been as bullish in terms of drawing that cold air south, but notice here something. The later runs of the GFS is even starting to see that resistance. This is battle between Arctic trying to come south and Atlantic air trying to move up from the south-southwest here. And that's a pretty notable area of low pressure seen by the latest model. This is for Thursday of next week, by the way. And you can see the essential resistance of the Atlantic battling out. Certainly Scandinavia, Central and Eastern Europe, going to be in the colder. It is going to be bitterly cold for even late November, early December standards here. Very strong winds, as you can see here. I am kind of skipping forward here because I'm conscious of time, unfortunately. But you can see here over the next few days here, into tomorrow morning and through the course of tomorrow, very strong northerly winds, particularly so over the North Sea. Notice here they're not as strong over the UK. Coastal areas of Caithness, into Murray, Aberdeenshire, right the way down that east coast of the UK is going to see that wind, and you're going to feel that wind. 6 Celsius at best on the thermometer. Factor in that 30, 40, 50 mile per hour wind coming out of the north. You're going to really notice that bite in the air, that's for sure. And then, as you can see here, the winds, the core of the strongest winds remain, generally offshore here. They remain out over the North Sea. Looking at snow prospects here, and again, I'm not overly enthusiastic about this, but you can see here that it is printing out some snow by 1800 tomorrow over the hills. Notice here that we are starting to see the snow cover lay down over Europe here, so that is quite an interesting fact here. And you can see the snow really starts to pick up through the course of next week here. But that is a fairly decent, nothing extreme, because of course, but remember the end of November, start of December 2010, we had a world of white, of course. But certainly by recent standards, this isn't looking too bad. Quite a decent amount of snow cover, and of course, when you lay down the snow cover, you increase the cold potential as well. But you can see here, hills of Scotland, southwestern Scotland, in particular southern uplands, Dumfries and Galloway, South Lanarkshire. We've got parts of Western Ireland, western parts of Northern Ireland, the hills of Cumbria, down the spine of the Pennines, north portion of Wales as well. You can see here that the snow is being printed out here. So nothing too dramatic. It looks as if towards the early portion of December, we may start to increase that snow a little bit. And look at the amount of snow now. It's starting to reach almost the Low Countries here into parts of France, Spain as well, seeing that cold air. So very impressive model runs here as we go into the early portion of the new month and of course the new season. So let's play through and see what the GFS is indicating towards the early portion of December here. So that area of low pressure, it's seen skipping south into the southern half of Europe here. And yeah, it's keeping that cold air pressing. And as that cold air continues to press, all it takes is for an area of low pressure to move in the right direction, and it opens that door. But I'm not entirely convinced that we're heading into a proper and prolonged spell of cold. We may get it for about a week or so. I'm not going to deny that. But in terms of the Manchulian oscillation progressing through the Indian Ocean and then towards Indonesia and Australia, that tends to correlate a different signal in terms of the global picture, the teleconnections and whatnot, as we go later down the road here. I think this is a spell of cold with some snow potential, end of November, early December, say week 1 of December, and I think we're starting to see the Atlantic come back in towards the end of week 1 here. So we will wait and see what happens with regards to this here. Finally, current temperatures across Europe. No surprise here, it is cold over Scandinavia. Notice here we're getting a little bit of sneaky warmth actually. This, of course, is ahead of the southbound cold front. Temperatures in the north 4, 5, 6 Celsius. Further south here, almost mid-teens, so quite a mild afternoon here. Mild across northern France, into the Low Countries, down towards southern Spain. We've got that wedge of cold over central Europe, and then, of course, the real cold is further east here. But the proper cold will come in as we go through the next several days here, and it'll be an interesting weekend to see exactly how cold. We'll look at this in a little bit more detail, hopefully, in the next day or so. So stay tuned. If you haven't already done so, be sure to subscribe. Lots of interesting things to come. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Bye for now.